Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fairfax Sports Report, bringing to you live on tape in the shadow of the Merrifield Multiplex Cinema, where I believe, BJ, they'll be playing Elizabethtown this Friday. It's a Cameron Crowe movie. It's got Kirsten Dunst in it. Where do you fall on Kirsten Dunst? That almost sounded dirty. Where do you fall on her as an actress?
I'm not too big of a Dunst fan.
No.
Yeah.
No?
I couldn't even tell.
Not even as Mary Jane in the Spider-Man films?
Yeah, she's too whiny.
Too whiny?
Spider-Man films. She kind of, I don't know, I'm not a fan.
Not a fan? Fair enough.
Yeah. Reese Witherspoon is my
that's
whiny person that I like.
That's a show in and of itself, my friend. I'm Greg Wyshynski from the Connection Newspapers. This is BJ Kubaroulis of the Connection Newspapers. And this week we have a lot to talk about. We have steroid issues to talk about. We have a huge football update, both of last week's games and this week's games. And then in our second half hour, we have what will probably prove to be an incredible interview, I'm sure, with the Oakton Cougars field hockey team. We've got the coach and some players here. And they are, by far, one of the elite programs in the region this year.
Yeah, hands down. I mean, they've got the only tarnish on Westfield's record, who seem to be pulling away from everybody, and they seem to be the team to beat now. 8-2 right now. So we're going to get a chance to talk with some of the stars of that team, and the coach Lizzie McManus really knows her stuff. So we're excited to get them on the show.
Fantastic,
and find out all the good stuff about Cougar field hockey.
And talk about the Concord district this year, because that district, obviously, with the redistricting, that's a sport that was definitely impacted with Fairfax and Robinson coming in. Want to mention the folks that make this show possible every week. We're, of course, talking about the Underwriters, Quality Care Ford Service Center, conveniently located in Fairfax, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299, and CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. You, my friend, wrote quite an article this week in the Connection newspapers about steroids, and it was a topic that came up in the regional meeting last week. It's a topic that's now been debated and put forth on both a national high school level and a state high school level. There's a plan, a policy in place. Tell me a little bit about this policy that's in place now to tackle the steroid issue on a high school level.
Well, I mean, basically, if you're caught using steroids in high school, there will now be a 2-year ban. That is the VHSL's emergency legislation, and they had to pass that because of what the General Assembly recently passed. And I guess we'll go through this chronologically to help people understand the issue. Okay, Congress started investigating Major League Baseball because of the book by Jose Canseco outing a bunch of Major League Baseball players. And as you mentioned in your column, which was very entertaining, I must say.
Oh, please.
They perp walked these guys out in front of the public eye and said, these are the bad guys, And so that has had a trickle-down effect now to the high school level, all the way through the minor league systems of all the sports, all the way through college, and obviously now we're down, to the high school level of sports. So the General Assembly passed, and it went into effect in March, that if, I don't know what the exact language was, but basically they named the VHSL without naming the VHSL. The Code of Virginia stated if you are an entity that is a nonprofit organization established since 1913 in Virginia governing public school sports, you have to make a 2-year ban. Exactly. That's like me saying if you're a sports editor at the Connection newspapers that does a show on Wednesday nights and wears a blue shirt, you have to come.
If you're a hybrid car and your name rhymes with Rios.
Exactly. They basically named them without naming them and basically forced the VHSL's hand in accepting the policy. And I'll read the policy, exactly what the policy states. It says, a member of a school athletic team shall be ineligible for 2 years to compete in interscholastic athletics if it is determined by the school principal and superintendent if that student used anabolic steroids. And it goes on further to say when the use had to be. So it's very vague and a lot of gray areas. The interesting thing is about how are they going to determine that? And I know you had some issues on that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the column that I wrote before. The column was dealing mostly with the steroid issue and enforcement of it. And that was the first question that I had about it when I learned about this policy, which is that basically from what I gather, since you don't have a testing mechanism in the steroid policy, what you're basically basing the discovery that a student athlete is using anabolic steroids on is either word of mouth, some sort of scuttlebutt, some sort of rumor or innuendo about a player, physical evidence the player has all of a sudden had all of these symptoms of or not actually call them after effects of steroid use, not necessarily symptoms, or that great sitcom thing where they open up their locker and then all of a sudden the pills fall out and everybody goes ooh, and then you cut the commercial. So to me, it's like it's
It
a
sounds
completely
like a Saved by the Bell episode.
yeah. Is it
actually.
exactly, or in that case, caffeine pills? To me, it's a completely toothless policy because how on earth are you going to enforce something if you don't test? Now, me personally, I am not a fan of testing kids in high school for drugs. I'm never going to be in favor of that. But in this instance, if the VHSL and the rest of the governing bodies in high school sports are specifically targeting a group of athletes, or targeting a group of students rather, and saying, okay, you're student athletes. There's a different set of criteria for you than for the regular old student. You have to do this, this, and this, and this to have the privilege of participating in student activities, extracurricular activities. And that's sort of what they've said. So if that's the case, and you really want to tackle this issue, to me, the only thing you can do is test.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I want to see happen. But if this is the way we're going,
Right.
and the end result is to clean up high school sports and make sure that steroids are not an issue, you're not going to accomplish that the way they're doing it now, which is to send a DVD to a high school, to put up a bunch of posters. That's the same thing they do for every other drug. And it's the same thing they do for drunk driving. It's the same thing they do with STDs and dating and things like that. It's all going to be a just mishmash of information, and people are going to ignore it.
But there's really, it's a two-part way that they're trying to tackle this giant of steroids, that, I talked to a couple high school coaches, football coaches. It's really, let's be honest, that's really what they're thinking, it has to do with, because football is a sport where there's a lot of pressure. If you were only 20 pounds bigger, we could really use you. And it's not necessarily coaches are saying, go do this. Never. They don't do that. But if you're a kid and you want to make the team and, there's that opportunity, maybe you're at a camp, those things all play into that decision. Really what they're trying to do now, the VHSLs, I guess their testing is merely a threat. Really what they're doing now is they're going to try to educate. And they'll be educating through posters, brochures, and like you mentioned the DVD, there's going to be a 10-minute DVD for parents and a 10-minute DVD for students. And it's basically, for lack of better words, kind of almost like a propaganda-style film, like, Johnny did steroids and look what happened to Johnny.
Right, exactly. And you and I both saw those movies when we were in high school. And what you do is you sit there and you either sleep or you laugh.
Yeah.
And to me, it's going to be inconsequential, even if you do make this thing horrific.
Yeah.
No one's going to really pay attention to it.
And it's going to be horrific. There's interviews with parents whose parents whose child committed suicide after using steroids, which is of course, horrible. But I mean, you're really going to scare some people, I think, with this. And it's the same thing with drugs. Parents, they go to the schools and they talk about drugs, and all of a sudden, every parent runs home and asks their kids, "Are you doing drugs?" And
Right.
That doesn't work. That's not the way to go about it. But the good thing to see is that they've done something about it. And to me, maybe the legislation is more of a let's cover our backs here to make sure we have something on the books. So it's interesting to see the evolution of what happens in professional sports trickling all the way down to high school sports. It's good that there's something there. I think there's still a lot of work yet to be done on it.
And you bring up drugs. I mean, let's be frank about this. Professional sports have taken a lot of measures to make sure that they don't have cokeheads on their teams. Mm-hmm. It's only recently that these steroid policies have finally gotten some teeth. They finally toughened up. And why? Because they sort of half-heartedly endorse steroids being in their sports because they made the athletes better, and when you have better athletes, you have a better product and you make more money.
Put butts in the seats to go watch home runs.
It's a trickle-down, it's an absolute trickle-down. So, and just like this is a trickle-down, just as soon as Congress paid attention to baseball, then all of a sudden the VHSL pays attention to high school athletes. It's the same thing. And that's why you sort of you're in this spot now, because we've had close to 2 decades of professional sports ignoring the problem because they were making money hand over fist.
I want to try to get a close-up of this, actually. Can you zoom in here? Let's get a close-up of this paper.
This great piece of art.
This is one of the posters, actually, that's going to be on the walls in local high schools. It says, as everyone knows, anabolic steroids make you more attractive. And this is a females poster, okay? This will be targeting females. It shows a young high school girl with acne all over her back and facial hair. So this is more of a scare tactic, I think, and it may actually work, to be honest with you.
I think it definitely is a scare tactic, and I think in some cases it is going to work. But I think overall, the education only goes so far.
Yeah.
And if you want to put out a bunch of propaganda, that's only going to take you so far. The only way you're going to get it out of the system is if you test and you make these penalties stick. You know, I had the idea that if you're a senior that gets caught with steroids, then the suspension should apply if your kid goes to the same school system
for his freshman year.
For his freshman year, yeah. Make it. I mean, listen, it's a problem, no doubt.
Yeah.
And it's good to see that we should say, because we haven't said it yet, that it's good to see that they're taking a serious approach and really trying to get this issue off the back burner into the forefront and get it done.
And before everybody freaks out and starts emailing the paper or the show, I'd like to make it very clear and evident that we have not had any reports of any kids using steroids in our high school northern region area. We have not, taken that into consideration in writing this story. This is merely legislation done by the VHSL. So relax. We're not saying your kids are on drugs out there. Calm down. All right, let's just get that disclaimer out there.
There you go. Well, I'll leave that as it is. So let's move on to football. Hell of a transition there, isn't it?
Oh, boy.
So anyway, so last week in the northern region, we had a lot of rain.
Yeah, that was fun.
And the rain created some very interesting situations. But first, we should talk about a couple of the games that happened. Well, we have games that happened Friday. We have games that happened Monday. First off, let's talk about Annandale and Hayfield. Now, this is an interesting game by virtue of the fact that Annandale, at one point in the season, looked like they were cooked.
Yeah.
And now, all of a sudden, you look at the standings, Annandale is on top of the Patriot District at 3-0, 3-2 overall.
And they're in our top 10. I think they started out there in the beginning of the year, I want to say, or close to there.
Right.
And, here they are, Dick Adams righting that ship. They're back in our top 10, and they're 3-2 in their district. So, 3-2 overall.
3-2 overall, 3-0 in the district.
So
right now.
undefeated in the district. Yep. That's a pretty big win for the Adams.
And Hayfield right now is 1-5 in the season. They're now 1-2 in the Patriot. And this was a team that at the beginning of the season it looked like they might be able to sneak in to those Division V playoffs by virtue of the schedule that they had, but they haven't won the games.
Yeah, they're not helping themselves there.
No, they aren't. Jefferson 49, Stewart 7. This game is on here by virtue of the fact that I forgot to take it off the schedule, because we really have nothing to say about this game. I mean, this is sort of the thing that happens when Jefferson plays Stewart, I think.
Typical Jefferson. I mean, they only gave up 7 points to a Stewart team, which, doesn't have the ability to score very often. But Jefferson's defense really hasn't proven itself. You can't really say what a defensive game for Jefferson, because Stewart isn't known for its offense. But, like Jefferson is like the Indianapolis Colts of last year. They're going to come out and try to outscore you with that quarterback they've got. Matt Wong can throw, run, do everything. He's pretty incredible, actually, to watch. Got a technique, actually, when I watched him play against Langley. He grips the ball from the middle. I've never seen anybody do that. And not sure, it works for him, and he completes passes, and he's actually got a little bit of zip on the ball. But just an interesting fact there on Wong.
Loudon Valley goes to Arlington and beats Yorktown 28-14. This is a big game. Now, what's interesting in the National District is that in years past, you've had Yorktown, you've had Edison, and you've had Mount Vernon as sort of the three top teams. And usually those teams are fighting for the same playoff spots. Sometimes they all get in, sometimes two of them get in to the postseason. This year, with Mount Vernon having taken a big tumble backwards, right now they are 0-5 on the season. Loudon Valley comes into the National, and now they are sort of that de facto third team in the playoff mix. They come into Yorktown, they win this game 28-14, show pretty good balance offensively, and really, I think, made a statement in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Valley has the opportunity. I mean, if Edison wasn't in that district, Valley has the opportunity to come in its first year of AAA football, traveling, 10 hours each way, to come in and maybe win the district. You can't write them off yet. They still have that showdown to go with Edison. They're looking real impressive. 4-1 overall and 2-0 in the district. not the strongest district, but maybe a good transition district for a AA team coming in for its first year.
Right, exactly. And it should be mentioned that Edison, when that game happens, which I believe is later, I think either later this month or early next month,
right.
Edison has to schlep all the way out to Loudoun Valley for that game. That's a heck of a home field advantage for the Vikings.
And Valley actually is known for its fans. You should see a basketball game at Loudoun Valley. Absolutely incredible. Those kids get out there and completely support that team. So they're not just going to have to deal with the home field advantage of travel. They're going to have to deal with a bunch of fans getting on them. So
right.
it's going to be an interesting atmosphere.
McLean 28, WT Woodson 21. McLean gets its first Liberty District win this year, and a bit of an upset here, I think. Although I believe one of us on this table picked McLean, and it wasn't me.
Well, then I guess by process of elimination, that would have to be genius over here. No, I'm just kidding. By looking at my record overall in picks this year, you're not going to call me that at all. But, let's talk about McLean for a minute. McLean had trouble this year getting its offense going. They've got, a couple of kids over there that can really run the ball. Eric Smith and Brendan Griffin, really outstanding athletes, just good athletes. And Rick Rivera, in his second year over at McLean, really righting the ship and getting things going. But has, trouble at quarterback. He's got a young guy now coming in. They started with a different quarterback earlier in the season. John Shola is now getting the start at quarterback. So it's going to be, they've played difficult opponents, and Coach Rivera will be the first to tell you that in their first couple weeks of the season. So it's just going to be interesting to see if now getting that first win against a young team, in Woodson, it's going to be interesting to see if they can actually get that offense going against somebody else who may be a little bit more of a difficult opponent.
And you mentioned young team. I talked to Coach Pannoni from Woodson this afternoon, and he kind of indicated that you've seen them now in consecutive weeks give up some pretty big offensive plays in their games, and sort of indicative of that young defense that they have this year. They obviously graduated a lot from last year's regional championship team. They've got a bit of a green defense this year, and it's really starting to show in these games. In fact, they had to move Ruben Ramey, who's been a pretty effective fullback for them, to the defensive side of the ball to try to shore up that unit. So WT Woodson right now is at, they are at 2-4 on the season, 1-2 in the Liberty. So kind of a step back for them off of last year's success. Oakton and Centerville. Oakton. Got some Oakton people in the house. 34-31, the Mighty Cougars
win
this game.
And you know what? There's someone else at this table that picked that game too. Who was that?
I believe that might have been you.
Me.
Hey, look, highlights.
Okay, we got Van Chu running up the sideline here, and he was, he had about 59 yards on the game from quarterback. You see number 4, Drew Dudzik. He's looking now to one of his favorite targets in Brandon Williams, and now he's headed over to that was Cameron Dose. Now Centerville scored 31 points again for the second consecutive week, and guess what? They lost.
They lost.
I mean, that's a tough way to go out. Oakton's defense really, held them in check. Maybe not so much as an Oakton defense is accustomed to doing, but they got the win. Their offense went out and really produced. Here you see Dudzik fires it over to Brandon Williams. He comes down with the ball. Dudzik had about 183 yards, his lowest production of the season against Oakton's defense. Did a pretty incredible job. That was Donald Murphy. He was shadowing Cameron Dose all night. That's Irvin Garner right there. He dropped a pass, but caught a pretty important one later in the game. Kevin Houghton, quarterback. This is a pretty big play all the way. Well, that wasn't the play, but they ran a fake Houghton falls on the ball here. But for their scoring play, they ran this, fake to Nalepa, the fullback, and an option toss to Payne, and that's Garner later with a catch, who ran all the way up for a 66-yard touchdown.
Now, what kind of quarterback is Houghton? He seems like when he's passing the ball, he kind of stays within himself, plays a little bit conservative. Can he throw it downfield a little bit? Or
he can air it out. He's got an arm, but Oakton is a running team, and this is who runs the ball for him right here, Keith Payne. Just a train, hard to tackle this kid. He's getting a lot of looks from D1 schools.
That rhymes. Did you know that?
The Payne train is actually what they call him.
Do they really, the Payne train?
Yeah. This is Taylor Nalepa right here. He is incredible. He's a big kid, bruising fullback, really well-spoken too. Not your typical football jock.
Oh, now that's just a stereotype.
And here's Houghton. He runs for a 62-yard touchdown. Looks like he's losing his wind there at the end of the run, but hey, your quarterback's not usually running the ball. Here's Dudzik again. Dudzik, 2 heartbreaking losses back-to-back. Here's Brandon Williams running the sideline, scoots across, the end zone here for one of their scores in the game, and heartbreaking back-to-back losses for Centerville. Here's that option pass. They were running this all night. Centerville stuffs it there, but Payne is such a hard guy to stop. He ran the ball, I think, 4 or 5 times on 4th down and converted every time. I talked to him after the game. He says, hey, it's not me. It's my offensive line.
Yeah, he's airing it out right there.
That's airing it out. That's the Curtis Eward, 62-yard touchdown. Eward came up with a gigantic sack at the end of the game on Dudzik to wow, that's right across the middle.
And it should be said that although this game was obviously a back and forth affair, it really did come down to like the last drive, didn't it?
Yeah, Oakton scored and Centerville had the opportunity to answer, and that's basically exactly what happened to them against Westfield last week. They just couldn't do it, and Curtis Eward came up with a huge sack on 3rd down to stuff Dudzik, who couldn't get the ball out, and in effect, in 4th down, they didn't convert, and that was the game. Oakton got the ball back, Houghton took a knee, and here's Taylor Nalepa. He is so hard to stop. Look at that. Incredible. That crossed the plane, didn't it? Nalepa can just bulldoze anybody in his way. Pretty incredible runner. 1-2 punch there they've got with Keith Payne and Taylor Nalepa. They really give a lot of credit to their line. Payne said after the game, he said, my grandmother and my great-grandmother could run for 100 yards. So that's an easy way to put it. Centerville tries for the onside kick there in an attempt to try to get some more points on the board, but Oakton special teams comes through. It's Keith Payne, real tough to stop. Look at that stiff arm.
That's a couple times he's done that this game.
Now, that was a questionable call there. They called a face mask, I believe, on that.
On Payne?
On Payne, and I tell you, I saw him do that earlier in the game tig right in front of us on the sideline. Just stuck his arm out on a stiff arm, and it was pretty. It was pretty. I felt bad for the kid actually.
Big win, big win for Oakton. We'll talk about their game against Westfield this week coming up in a few moments. Keeping with last week, West Springfield 64-23 over West Potomac. It looks like they righted the ship. Peter Lalich had a big day passing, and Westfield 26-7 over Herndon. The only surprise I think I had in this game was you'd expect Herndon to be a little bit better than 7 points against Westfield.
Yeah, you would expect the offense over at Herndon, which has been going all year, to really, Centerville put up, 31 points against Westfield.
Right.
And Herndon's no joke on offense. So myself, I was pretty, not disappointed, but shocked to see that Herndon didn't get more points on the board, only 7 points, and I think it came in the 4th quarter. Same thing that happened to them against, Robinson. Kind of couldn't really overcome the offensive struggles, and maybe if they had, they might have been more in that game. But they also, the defensive side of the ball, let Royster in the end zone for three touchdowns, adding to, I think, up to 18 on the season for him. So pretty incredible.
Switching to this week's action, Chantilly at Fairfax, both teams coming off a bye from last week. This game is at Fairfax. Pretty interesting one. I think this is a game that Chantilly wins, but it should be pretty close.
Yeah, let me look and see who I picked on that. Yeah, I picked Chantilly. I picked Chantilly. Says go Chantilly. No, I'm just kidding.
There you go.
Both teams coming off a bye. So we'll see how that one shakes out.
Edison at South County. Now South County came as close as they've come to a victory last week. They played in a rainstorm at Lake Braddock on Friday. By the 4th quarter, the field was a mess. They lost that game 7-0. Braddock scoring on a Jordan Russell touchdown in the 3rd quarter. They get Edison this week, and this one could get out of hand. Edison is a team that can put up a lot of points in a hurry.
Yeah, they played on Friday, as did Langley. And I guess, Langley forced Stonebridge to come out all the way across town over in the rain. And I guess, it seemed like, South County maybe did the same thing. Do you think that was some tactic in getting, games in the rain for maybe a less experienced team?
Well, it could be. Lake Braddock actually made the call in the South County game because the game was in Burke. And it was sort of a risky call because obviously if you're Lake Braddock, you think you're a bit of a better team than South County. In the rain, you kind of even things out a little bit, and that was exactly what Jim Poythress, the coach at Braddock, said. That said, though, when you're Braddock and you've got a pretty big offensive line and defensive line, you've got some running backs, you think you're still going to be able to push around South County in the rain, and maybe a young team makes a few more mistakes in those kinds of conditions. The team it really helped was Lee last week, and their ground attack in defeating T.C. Williams at home on a wet track, and T.C. Williams coach Greg Sullivan was none too happy after that happened. Herndon at Jefferson. This is a very interesting game in the sense that I think Herndon's offense, if it gets going, is going to be able to keep that Jefferson attack off the field.
Yeah, if they can eat up the yards, and that was what Oakton did against Centerville, they just long, sustained drives, and that's the best defense against an offense who's got a quarterback in Matt Wong and a couple of other targets over there. But if you keep your team on the field, obviously, their offense can't get up in there and score like I think they're averaging somewhere. Let's see, Jefferson's offense is fifth in the region right now. Excuse me, fourth in the region right now, and they're averaging 38.8 points a game.
Well, that's not too shabby.
You can't let a team like that get on the field and have an opportunity. So if you're Herndon, you need to welcome this team with a big defense.
But not open arms, clearly, obviously.
Thank you.
Lake Braddock is playing at Langley in a game where obviously both teams played last Friday. They play this Friday. Interesting game in the sense that I think that I give Langley the edge because I don't have confidence that Braddock's going to score enough points to beat the Saxons in this game.
Langley's really perplexed me all season. I mean, came out singing Langley's praises early in the season, you know, and it's week to week with them. And you know, they've got a guy now in Josh Siegel who is slowly progressing into that starting role at tailback, and he's had a couple of 100-yard games. Maybe he's the guy that they look to, and maybe by the end of the season they're a completely different Langley team than they were when they started the season. Gotcha.
Lee at Hayfield, big game for the Lancers in the sense that this is a game that they have to win. It's a game they should win, and it's a Patriot District game. Right now they're 2-0 in the district. They've got a nice thing going. This is not a place where you can stumble against what's sort of a geographic rival for them.
Yeah. Rivalry games, I mean, if you're going to call it such, those are the games that both teams get up for. So
exactly.
We'll see how that one.
Madison at Stonebridge, two teams undefeated right now in the Liberty District. And who's your pick in that one?
I don't know. I mean,
say, who was your pick in that one? Did we even pick it?
Did we pick it?
We didn't.
We didn't pick it. I'll pick it now. You know, it's tough. That's a tough game. It's Gordon Live over at Madison. It's his double wing versus Mickey Thompson over in Stonebridge, his single wing. That single wing has given everybody fits. And what it is, I've talked to a couple of region coaches this week and then through the weeks of reporting, and basically most of the consensus is that's old school. It's old school football, the single wing that they're running at Stonebridge. And Mickey Thompson is banking on everybody around here has forgotten how to stop the single wing. It's like me going up to a 10-year-old and giving him Tetris. You know what I mean? These kids don't know anything about Tetris now. They're playing Nintendo 64s and PlayStations.
Nintendo 64.
They don't know anything about. They don't know anything about the old school games.
1998.
Yeah, well, I'm saying they don't know. All right, GameCube or whatever. They don't know anything about those old school systems. What if I hand this 10-year-old kid an Atari? He's not going to know what to do with it. And that's basically what Mickey is.
So probably take it apart and rebuild it right in front of you.
Exactly. But that's what Mickey is doing with his single wing offense. He's basically saying, hey, you remember how to play this game? Stop it. And nobody's been able to stop that single wing. And it's really a simple, old-school approach. And,
exactly.
That's why I'm going to go ahead and pick Stonebridge. But Madison has the ability to make teams look bad, and if they hold on to the football, that's what they did against South Lakes this week. They don't give you the football, and you can't score.
They get that ugly offense going, and they can beat anybody on any given night. Because if you can run the ball, you can win a game, and Madison can flat out run the ball on a good night. Marshall at McLean, I expect Smith and Griffin to run all over the Statesman defense. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, Statesman's defense had 2 shutouts so far. You know, this year they didn't quite make our well, actually, they did make our top 10 defensive leaders. They're only giving up 15.8 points a game, and that's in 5 games. It's pretty impressive. They haven't played the toughest competition,
right?
So that's maybe skewed a bit. But you know, maybe McLean comes out and says, "Yeah, we can get this thing going." You know, Marshall's got a couple of offensive sparks. That's going to be an interesting game, actually.
FSN Cox game of the week is Robinson at Centerville. Ooh. What a game that's going to be, an absolute war. I talked to Mark Bendorf today, coach at Robinson. He said they are well rested, they are ready, coming off their bye week. Quarterback Matt Goff, who had a little problem with his eye in the game against Herndon, is rested, healthy, ready to go. And he expressed some concern about playing Centerville coming off 2 losses. Their backs are against the wall. That said, Robinson is right now the best team in the region, and until proven otherwise, the best team in the region, and they're my pick in this game.
You know, I picked them too, but honestly, I could go with the Centerville pick. And this is going to sound a little crazy. We've had some people pick Centerville, but Robinson has rested, like you said, for a week, and Centerville is coming off 2 really difficult losses. The same score, the same result, the same final drive, 34-31 loss. They've scored 62 points in their last 2 games and have lost to the toughest teams in the state. Centerville is the best 0-2 team probably in the history of football. Okay, they are incredible.
You've done the research on that?
I've actually gone back. I've gone back.
You're glib. You haven't done the research.
Listen, Tom Cruise.
Okay.
You know, it's difficult. I mean, for a Centerville team that has so much promise and, you know, running that no huddle offense, maybe they get back on track against the Robinson team that had some time off, and, you know, maybe they don't come back as strong. We don't know, but it is a Bendorf coach team, so they will respond.
Should be a fantastic game. I'll tell you what, we're going to go straight to the top 10 in the connection in the FSN poll. I want to say that T.C. Williams right now is number 10, Loudoun Valley 9, Stonebridge 8, Yorktown. Oh, actually, check that. Oh. I screwed up the poll. I was reading an old one.
Okay.
I scratched that. That one was written on a cocktail napkin. Annandale 10, Yorktown 9, Loudoun Valley 8, Stonebridge 7, Herndon 6, Centerville 5, Edison 4. I know everybody disagrees with that, but that's the poll. Westfield 3, Oakton 2, Robinson 1 until proven otherwise, which could be this weekend. And again, Centerville losing 2 games in a row like this, Edison continuing to win. If those 2 teams played, you probably pick Centerville. But right now, based on the way things have worked out this season, Edison at 4, Centerville at 5.
It's tough to give an 0-2 team in their district a higher seed in our poll than Edison, who's undefeated. And you know, they're pretty impressive. Oakton climbed this week to number 2. Frankly, I picked them from the beginning of the season to come out of the Concord district. Robinson's looking real strong. That I think those 2 teams are going to be battling.
There you go.
For that top spot at the end of the season.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Lizzie McManus, 2 for fantastic players in the Oakton field hockey team, and join us when we come back for some field hockey talk.
Get a job.
Look, it's a giraffe.
I don't see it.
The less art kids get, the more it shows. Are yours getting enough? Art. Ask for more. AmericansForTheArts.org.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. Greg Wyshynski of the Connection Newspapers, BJ Cooper of the Connection Newspapers, and a bevy of guest stars now. Coach Lizzie McManus of the Oakton Field Hockey Team, Katie Moran of the Oakton Field Hockey Team, and Kayla Kraut of the Oakton Field Hockey Team. Since we've got Oakton in the hizzy, as it were.
As our boy Snoop does
That's
say.
right. We wanted to take a second, before we get to the field hockey, to talk about the Westfield-Oakton football game. Now, I, in the Connection Newspapers, I think that clearly it's a great game. I tend to lean towards Oakton in this game.
Well, after what I just saw and their ability to hang on to the football, they're going to really, keeping it out of Evan Royster's hands is really the way to beat Westfield. Oakton's got a good defense, so it's going to be an incredible game, and it's on a Saturday. We should mention Saturday at 7:30. It's going to be a great game, and we've actually got some experts here from Oakton to tell us all about that defense, guys. Who's your favorite player? Each of you name your favorite player on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. Coach, we'll start with you.
Oh, offense, I have to say Keith Payne, and defense, Jackson Kibler.
Really?
Yeah, he did a lot of good stuff on Friday night, or Monday night.
Right, Monday, yeah.
Monday.
Offense, Taylor Nalepa, and defense, Mark Davis.
Offense, Taylor Nalepa. She stole mine. And defense, Jackson Kibler.
You guys should get together and talk about Taylor later, because you've got sort of a...
I talk about Taylor every week. So, Taylor, you got a big fan club here at Channel 10, and the ladies seem to love you too. So,
There you go. There you go. Well, there's the football. So your pick is?
Obviously Oakton. I mean, I think they're coming out of that
Obviously.
district. So, hey, I've been saying them all year. And you know what? Phil Levine, if you're watching this, I have been touting Oakton all year. I don't want to hear this, give us some respect.
It's almost embarrassing how much you've been touting Oakton. But yeah, so there it is. Well, we're going to learn a lot about the Concord district this weekend. I mean, with this game, with the Centerville-Robinson game, it's going to be an eye-opener. I think we're going to get that playoff picture is going to get a heck of a lot more clear after this weekend. You know what I mean? Yeah. All right. Oakton field hockey now. You guys are winning as much as the football team. But I guess you probably don't get as many fans as the football team.
No, unfortunately.
Well, that's why you're here, because we want people to come out and see you guys. Now, Coach, tell us about the team this year. How have you been doing? What's your record in the Concord? How are things going with Oakton Field Hockey?
They're going great. We're 8-2. Our first 2 losses were our 3rd and 4th games of the season to Woodson and Lake Braddock, who are having really strong seasons. We're 4-0 in the district. We beat Westfield. That was a big game for us. But I think our team's young. I mean, we lost 10 seniors last year, all of whom started at any given time last year. So Katie Moran was really our only starting player to come back. And then the rest of them are just, we have 6 seniors on the squad this year and 2 sophomores and 11 juniors. So it's pretty young.
Now, we are not going to allow you to downplay here on the Fairfax Sports Report.
Got it.
Just because it might upset the Westfield people. They were undefeated when you beat them. They were the talk of the town when you beat them, and you knocked them off. And right now, you're the only team to have done it. What does that do, say, should you two meet in the postseason? Do you go into that game with that on your mind? Do they go into that game with that on their mind that, hey, we've already lost to these guys?
Yeah, I mean, that game was huge, and I know that the way that we played it, I know Westfield's going to come out strong next time we see them. I mean, they're going to come out huge. But I have to say, I talked to a lot of the Westfield players, and they claim that wasn't their best game. But going back, I don't think that was our best game. I mean, it was a matter of heart that night. It was raining. It was a very weird atmosphere, but we came out strong. And I think that by us playing such hard teams and difficult teams at the beginning of the season really helped us. And I just think that we'll come out on top again if we have to. I mean, it was a 3-1 game.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So, Katie, what position are you playing this year?
I play center back most of the time.
And you?
Left back.
Left back? Oh, so we have some strong defenders here. Is that sort of the hallmark of the team this year?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I always put my experienced and strongest players in the back.
So you're building from the back alley kind of thing.
If you don't have a good defense, you can't win.
What's the key to being a good field hockey defender?
Just like staying low, really help like going to your teammate to help support and pressure and working together.
I think talking is a huge part of defense because if you're pressuring the ball, you have to know where your other defender is to help you out. So talking the whole time is really important.
Mm-hmm. From what you've seen so far this year, I mean, obviously Westfield is a team in your class. How does the rest of the Concord break down? And is it a different landscape now that Robinson and Fairfax have kind of come into play?
Yeah, those were 2 additions that totally brought up the caliber of play in the Concord. Although we did lose Thomas Jefferson, who was very strong last year and who's strong this year too. But I saw Robinson and Fairfax play all summer long, all winter. I know a lot of their players, and they're very good. And we beat Robinson, but Fairfax has a lot of strong players. And the rest of the team, I mean, Herndon gave us a run for our money, and I think this is the best team they've ever had. I think Centerville was strong. I mean, despite their record, they're a strong team. Mm-hmm.
And hearing from a lot of coaches around the region, they say that the Concord, and this is true with a lot of sports, but the Concord field hockey is really the toughest place to play. Would you say that's true? And I guess being in that district, you have to play every game as if it may be the game. What's that like on a given day?
Well, I mean, there's no easy game. I mean, which we're learning this year. You can't go into any game thinking that, we'll try new things this day. But we really are learning that every single district game matters, and you have to go into it with the same intensity you go into. Westfield was huge, not only because they were in our district, but because they were undefeated, and because we know a lot of those players. But that's the way we went into that game is the way we have to go into every game. I think other districts have maybe their easy games. Mm-hmm. I don't think we do. And
Coach, can you describe your 2 stars here? Describe each of their abilities. Well, I guess we'll start with Katie. Describe her as a defender. And just more than that, what she brings to the team.
Katie's a 4-year starter on varsity, very rare. They're both captains. She's our center back, which I think is the leader of the team. She has to be very vocal in terms of just skill-wise, just telling everybody where to go. I mean, she's practically a coach on the field. I mean, she leads all of the players around her. all over the place. And then when she plays, I think it just brings up the intensity of everybody. I mean, the entire team looks up to her. Her skills are way, way up there. And she's worked very hard to get to the point where she's at. So, and she plays well on both sides of the ball, defensively and offensively. She's a huge part of our offensive corner unit and our defensive corner unit, which is like a penalty corner. I don't know if you guys are aware of that.
Well, we do cover the sport occasionally.
Well, I don't know. I mean, but she's a huge part of that. And then Kayla, I have to say, is not talking about her skill yet, is the heart and soul of our team. She just, every time out, every halftime, every time there's a time to talk, she is pumping the girls up, which is the other half of Katie Moran. I mean, we need both of these players at every time on the field. But then again, she is playing a very difficult position, left back, which sees a lot of defense. And she actually, at the beginning of the year, she was a forward, and then she moved to midfield, and now moved her back to the back. And I think I'm really happy with the way she's playing. I mean, we need her to stop those opponents' attacks.
How did you guys get into field hockey? I guess is a good question. I always like asking people that. Was it siblings, people like that, or how'd you wind up playing the sport?
Well, for me, it was a combination of both. Oakton does a cougar camp for younger girls, and I got into that over the summer. And so I started doing that about 2 summers before high school. And my sister started playing field hockey at Oakton her sophomore year. And so then the year before my freshman year, I started playing summer league with the team, and I actually went to the Maryland summer camp with Oakton girls. So I was able to get some preparation and training there. So.
Well, actually, my mom was a coach at Chantilly when we used to live in Chantilly, but we moved to Texas, and so no one knew of the sport of field hockey in Texas. So when we moved back, I just needed a way to meet friends in Oakton, so I joined Cougar Camp and tried out the next week. So
you both mentioned Cougar Camp. Now obviously,
big, coach.
This
big coach,
big right there. Right. Yeah, I was gonna say now there aren't the same sort of opportunities away from high school sports for field hockey that there are for other sports. I know that there are certain camps, certain club programs you can have, but it's not on the same level as soccer, not on the same level as lacrosse. How important is it to develop that sort of thing at the youth level to have more players come through, they get more experience going to high school?
Oh, it's huge to have that. I mean, and I have Cougar Camp, which is very advantageous for us, but there are a lot of schools that do have youth programs that feed into, and I would think that the Virginia Beach area, do they play in intermediate school?
Yes, they have a middle school level program. They also have the futures programs, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with those, and they have the feeder programs and all that. So yeah, they play the middle school stuff, and I want to say they're probably going to start doing elementary school with it over there. It's so big, but yeah, the beach schools, they really focus on the young girls, getting them out. Yeah, it's big.
It makes a difference to your program. I mean, if you can, come tryouts, when these girls are coming in their freshman year, you have about 5 days to look at them and determine whether they're going to make it. Which is unfair. In soccer, or basketball, you can watch these girls play all their life and be able to be like, oh, she's going to Oakton, great.
Right.
But we do have a freshman program too, which I think is growing in the county. I think 13 schools have a freshman program, and we're just now this year seeing it come full circle. I have a lot of varsity players that were on the freshman team, and to think that they may have been cut their freshman year.
Now, there are parts of the state that don't even have field hockey programs, right? I mean, not the entirety of the VHSL doesn't have field hockey. You've been in the sport for a while. You played in high school.
At Oakton.
At Oakton, no less. Do you? The numbers don't seem to have really fluctuated much. You see some sports where the numbers have kind of gone up and down as generations come through. But field hockey seems to be sort of a constant. Do you think it's always going to be a constant, or is there sort of a thing where you're needing to bang the drums a little harder to get kids to come out?
Well, that's a good question, but I think it's the fall sport that there's not a lot more that offers. That are offered for girls. Now, if soccer comes, there's going to be an issue.
Right.
And I always hear that, and I know that the private schools have soccer, I think, in the fall, which would really hurt us.
Right.
But I think it might be constant, although it is growing. It's growing in the youth level, even within the last 10 years since when I played. But it might remain a constant. There's not a whole lot more offered in the fall for the girls.
You guys play another sport?
Yes, we both play lacrosse for Oakton.
The old lacrosse field hockey
Big
connection.
crossover there.
There's a lot of crossover.
What's with that? Does that help you playing lacrosse and field hockey and the crossover there? I mean, the same type of riffs you got to find, the seams you got to find.
And it's the same teammates, basically, right? I mean, I know that's one of the reasons why Woodson's always so good, because the Woodson lacrosse girls play Woodson field hockey. It's the same thing at Oakton, I guess, huh?
Well, actually, we're both soccer transfers. We both used to be big into soccer. I was actually debating whether to play soccer or lacrosse for high school.
I did play soccer my freshman year and switched over to lacrosse sophomore year.
Why the switch? What did you like better, I guess? What was the defining factor that got you to switch?
Well, I think the coaching staff, because I mean, we had lacrosse is just a really fun coaching staff, and I love all the girls on there. And although I like the girls on soccer too, and I just soccer is just too competitive, too much. Got burned out.
Yeah, there does seem to be sort of that vibe in field hockey. Now, I was going to say I don't want to, undermine the sport, but it seems like a fun sport. It seems like there's a real kind of nice vibe where everybody gets along, and it's a nice way. You're in school, you're getting acquainted with all the fall school stuff, and you have field hockey as a nice way to kind of break up the season, it seems. Is that the case? You find it to be more fun than the spring sports? Tough to say?
Well, it's fun because you're just coming back to school. You don't have all the stresses yet of tests and finals and stuff like that. So, and you're getting reacquainted with all your teammates, and you're coming back and seeing all the girls after the summer. So it is really fun, and it's a nice transition back into school.
What's the one thing about the sport that people don't understand? I'm sure there's a lot more than this one thing, but when they come to a game, or you bring in your family out, or somebody who's never seen the game, what's something that they struggle with? What's the rule or the issue that they struggle with? I know for me, it's obstruction. I still cannot understand what constitutes obstruction. I mean,
The girls don't understand that sometimes.
Actually, all the rules people don't seem to understand. Obstruction is a hard one. Not only obstruction, but something called third party. Which is, say if Lizzie and Kayla were on the same team, or if Lizzie and I were on the same team, and Kayla's trying to defend Lizzie, and I run right through, it's kind of obstructing Kayla.
It's like a screen.
To get
right.
Sort of.
Yeah, so that's kind of hard to notice.
When you first started playing field hockey, did you think the rules were basically if the referee blows the whistle every 30 seconds and the other team gets the ball?
Actually, when I first started playing, my first actual game was in a summer league game with Oakton. And I didn't really know what a corner was yet. So the referee blew the whistle, and like, oh, come back to do a corner. And I was like, I didn't know where to go. So somebody had to kind of pull me over and be like, you go back to the half line. So the rules are very confusing at first, but they catch on pretty quickly.
When we sit in the stands and cover field hockey, the parents are there, they're watching the game, they're trying to follow it as best they can with the rules and everything. And occasionally you get into these conversations with people. And two things that always come up when I cover a field hockey game are I'll start with the first thing. The first thing is turf. Do you think that this game would be completely different if you had the opportunity to play on turf every game?
I think it would be incredibly different. I love playing on turf because play on turf for Futures and the National Futures Tournament and other tournaments during the summer. It makes the game not only for the players but the fans. It makes it so much faster. The skills are so much quicker and so much tighter, and it's just a completely different game.
And our field's not that good. I mean, the balls bump up because we haven't gone to Bermuda grass or anything. So if we played on turf, we wouldn't have the random high hits that bump off the grass. And
and there are some schools in the region where they're playing, on a converted baseball field or a softball field, and you got balls hitting the lip of the infield and things like that. I mean, I got to imagine that on synthetic turf, like they have at Fairfax right now, the game is remarkably different.
It's this. I mean, I think in any sport, the surface matters so much in field hockey. I mean, there's indoor field hockey, there's turf field hockey, which you have a lot of the Division I college teams playing on, and then there's grass. I mean, that matters. I mean, what you play on really, it doesn't matter in lacrosse. It doesn't matter really so much in soccer. I don't even. I mean, the ball's rarely in the air, so I mean. And a faster-paced surface, like whether you play on turf or indoor, your skills are automatically going to get much better, and you'll be a much more solid team.
one thing people don't usually understand about field hockey is that it's actually a pretty violent game. Everybody looks to football, oh, they're hitting each other. But they got pads on. You guys are out there throwing themselves around, hitting each other with sticks. Talk a little bit about, I don't want to call it violent, but I mean, you guys are going home with some pretty big welts. Talk a little bit about, do you have a story you want to share?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty consecutive getting bruised and welts. One time I came off the field and I remember getting hit with a stick or a ball earlier in the game, and I came off at the end and it was sore or whatever. I looked down and it was just an egg above my shin guard, and everyone started putting me out doesn't that hurt? I was like, yeah, but it's a ball. Of course it hurt. I mean, that was really hard.
We've actually had a girl on our team get her cheek split open already this season.
Wow.
And
your finger?
Oh, the tip of my finger was broken from a ball hit it, and I mean, people get bruises all the time, especially back to the field situation. When you play on fields that are grass and have bumps on it, it's hard when you're trying to take a quick hit, the ball pops up, and that makes it a lot more dangerous, a lot more chances to get hit in the face, which does happen a lot.
I was going to say, I've never, truth be told, taken a shot with a field hockey stick. How much control do you have to keep the ball on the ground? Is it really sort of hit or miss as far as putting the ball airborne, or does it depend more on the surface you're playing on?
Well,
okay, go ahead.
well, I was going to say the initial hit is more just tactic skills, like keep your head down, don't pop up. But if you hit the ball fast and it hits a bump, it's not your fault. The refs shouldn't call it a high ball because it hit off the ground and went high. And the other team just has to play and deal with it.
Right.
A lot of times if you're trying to take a quick hit, the ball might roll into a hole, and so if you hit the ball, it automatically pops up, so that's kind of hard to deal with.
I mentioned the parents before, and the other thing besides turf that they always mention to me is, I don't know if you noticed, but occasionally the field hockey games go to overtime. And when they do, you guys drop down to
7 aside.
7 aside, right. And the game seems to have more flow up and down the field, a lot more offensive chances. Would you be at all upset if they played 7-on-7 all the time? I mean, granted, it does take some players off the field for both teams, but from a gameplay standpoint, is it a better game 7-on-7?
Well, playing it's very tiring. It's very tiring playing 7-aside. You do try and hit the ball more and not make more passes and not run it yourself because it's so tiring. But I don't know. I think playing 7-aside take out the special element to field hockey, the intricacies of working it around players and give and goes and stuff like that.
Some of the strategy, yeah. Well, as a coach, what do you think? Do things dramatically change for you 7-on-7?
They do change, but I agree with Katie. It would it's tiring, and you can't always have your best players in there. I mean, because they're just going to be exhausted. I mean, it really does take away from stringing passing together in any recovery period you might have in an 11-11. But it's fun to watch. But it's amazing how much, if you don't capitalize on your chances in the regulation period, that it does go to 7-aside, and that's anybody's game. I mean, people could be a really good overtime team, and you might not be.
Right.
And it changes. It's a different game.
Right. Now, I would be remiss
like it.
if I didn't ask you this. I'm a big ice hockey fan, and I hate the fact that the NHL has put in the shootout this year to end games that are tied in overtime. Do you hate penalty strokes? Do you think that they ruin the game if it goes to strokes, or do you think it's part of the game?
I hate it. I took the girls up to watch a college game, Maryland and Wake Forest, and it went into double overtime, and Maryland dominated the whole time, and it went to strokes, and that's not the game.
Yeah.
It's just not, but I guess at some point you have to end. You can't play 3 or 4 hours, so I'll say I don't like it.
Right.
I know that each team is at its, at the same point, but I'd like to avoid that at all costs.
You're probably just happy you don't have to run anymore at that point, right? Or,
Actually, well, it's really nerve-wracking if you're actually taking the stroke, because if you miss it, it could be the one that makes the decision on the game. So mentally and emotionally, it really takes a toll.
Right. What do you think about strokes?
I just don't like it because, a lot of the outcomes of games, they don't really reflect how the game is played and stuff, and especially for penalty strokes, it's just whether the goalkeeper it's all about the goalkeeper really, and then the penalty stroker, and just hoping that it goes in, I guess.
You don't talk about pressure. I mean, on the keeper. Oof.
Yeah.
Man, that's a lot. You don't even know your defense. I mean, most of the time you have your defense in front of you during the game, at least on corners and stuff like that. But then when you're one-on-one,
it's a completely different skill they have to learn.
Exactly.
I mean, completely.
Right, and for most, I'm sure for most keepers, it's a skill that they don't really hone that well.
Right.
Because their mind is somewhere else most of the time in practice and things like that. Do you practice strokes a lot? Or?
We do. We try to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in case. I mean, because we've actually had a few strokes this year, just in regulation. So you have to know who your strokers are.
Right.
And who can perform in clutch situations.
Right.
Because they might be good in practice, but if you can't get it done under pressure, then there's no use in doing it.
Speaking of pressure, we got the district tournaments coming up, I believe. You guys, are you done with the regular season? You got a couple games left before? Two more. Who's next on the menu for you guys?
Fairfax, who we were supposed to have on Tuesday, but that's been moved because of rain to Saturday, and then Chantilly immediately on Monday.
Okay, so you get those 2 wins, and you're 10-2, and you're headed into the district tournament. I guess obviously Westfield's a team to look at. You know, Chantilly, like you said, you're going to play them two before that. Break down the district tournament for us. Who's the team to beat?
I hope Westfield is. I hope. For us, Westfield will be a team to. I hope we see them. I hope that we get to see them in the finals. But I am not talking over Chantilly. They're going to come out for us. I know that they scouted our Westfield game, so he's going to be ready. Ralph Chapman, actually, and they're always a very tough, aggressive opponent. So I don't want to talk until we're done with that.
There you go. Well,
and Fairfax, so.
Well, Coach Lizzie McManus and Katie Moran and Kayla Kraut, good luck to you in the postseason. We'll obviously be keeping our eyes on you as you head through the Concord District, hopefully through the region, and maybe down to the beaches probably for the states. Who knows?
I may go down there to cover it just because I know I have a place to stay.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you for coming to the show. We really appreciate it. Want to mention the Fairfax Sports Report, of course, is seen every Wednesday at 10, Thursdays at 7, Fridays at nooner on Cox Cable Channel 10. News and commentary from local sports insiders, VJ.
We're insiders.
The high school game of the week coming up, 10:15, Robinson at Centerville. Games there Saturdays at 6 on Cox 35 with Pete Daly, 5 a.m. and 6 p.m. That is going to be a fantastic game. FairfaxSportsNetwork.com on the web. Please visit our exquisite photo gallery, where there are many photos. Quality Care Ford Service Center, thank you for underwriting us. Conveniently located in Fairfax, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. And CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. Well, there you go. Where are you going to be this weekend?
I'm going to go to Stonebridge, Madison.
Okay.
See the double wing versus single wing.
Fantastic.
Then I'm going to try to go to New Jersey.
All right. Well, I'm going to go to Robinson, Centerville, and I was born in New Jersey.
The gravel state, baby.
It's the Garden State.
Oh, I mean the Garden State.
Thank you for watching, everybody. And
there's
please
no
join us
gardens
next
there.
time. There's plenty of gardens.
Gravel.
Just because you don't see it on the turnpike doesn't mean there's no gardens.
I think they're playing the Sopranos music.
Oh, are they really? Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go.